Greetings. Today I want to talk about, more than anything else, the theme of Deus Ex Human Revolution. I don't want to talk too much about the gameplay. In fact, I won't talk about it at all. I don't think the gameplay is particularly spectacular. I don't even want to talk too much about the characters unless there's a direct relevance for doing so. I want to talk about the theme of Deus Ex Human Revolution. What's the theme? Well, transhumanism, that's one theme. To me, though, it's much more about human nature. You see, to me, based on countless observations I've made throughout my life, human progress, however you want to term it, interpret it, or understand it, is an ineluctable force that presses ever forward. And traditionally and classically, as has always been the case, there are oppositional forces within the universe of Deus Ex, Human Revolution, the Humanity Front, the Taggarts. People want to control it through government regulation, the mechanical augmentation. And of course, you have people like Seraph, who are essentially propagators of this technology. But what is Adam Jensen in the scheme of this? Well, not much, really. Adam Jensen is like the vector for a virus. I'm not calling mechanical augmentation a virus per se, but he's simply a vector. He's so cardboardy and boring, it doesn't really matter. He is a symbol more than anything else. He is the missing link, if you will. Now, as I have discontinued my Deus Ex Human Revolution Let's Play. I am continuing the Skyrim one, of course. I'll tell you what I would have chosen as an ending. I would have sided with David Seraph and the propagators of mechanical augmentation. For two reasons. One reason, as I said, is that human progress on aggregate is something that cannot be avoided. People who resist the push forward made by humanity as a collective, as a whole, get left in the dust. Good example of this, people of my generation who, or perhaps somewhat older, who refuse to adapt to the new technology, the fact that computers became a ubiquity everywhere, the fact that the internet became a necessity, which is why I'm so crippled now that I don't have internet in my home without an internet stick. But anyway, without this adaptation to that, those people got lost in the dust. Typing used to be a skill. Now every Tom, Dick, and Harry can type. The same can be said or seen in these people resisting augmentation technology in Deus Ex Human Revolution. These people will be left in the dust too if they do not adapt. This isn't a question within the context of this argument that I am making of right or wrong. It is simply something that is. When I speak of an ineluctable force, I'm talking about something that cannot be stopped, a juggernaut, moving ever forward. Now, you either get crushed by the juggernaut, or you try to follow in its footsteps. Maybe you follow along the same path, in tandem. In any event, going against the juggernaut is probably a bad idea. And people of the past who resisted technological advancement to the point where it became a disadvantage to them to do so, they got left in the dust too. Well, behold the Humanity Front or Humanity First, the different factions representing the so-called pure humans, the purists, the Taggarts who are afraid that this is getting out of control. And yes, we see within the context of Deus Ex, of course, the technology gets out of hand. It gets into the wrong hands. It falls into the wrong hands. We see it in the mercenaries that Adam Jensen has to combat. We see this. So can it happen? Of course, it's already happened. But I say to this, so what? Everything that humanity creates, every new technological advancement, invention, creation, bears with it the possibility of negative consequences. We saw this in the early 20th century with the developments in physics, which ultimately led to the development of hydrogen atom bombs in the later early 20th century and the mid-20th century. We see this with virtually every piece of technology. Look at the ubiquity of the internet. Look at it, the fact that it is essentially indispensable. That's why I'm kind of at a severe disadvantage not having internet in my home. You need it these days. Well, are there negatives to the internet? Of course there are. Entire caches of data, and these data have personal information. They can tell random people things about you, your background. I mean, of course, there's a huge potential risk there, and it is abused. There are hackers. I mean, the internet, it's in theory a living risk. It's something that's with us right now. We have to accept, and we use it anyway. And I say this to illustrate my point, is that simply that the fact that some group within the context of Deus Ex takes advantage in an abusive manner of mechanical augmentation technology is not an argument against mechanical augmentation technology. And it's also not an argument for the necessity of government regulation, for the people that believe that everything needs to be invigilated against and everything needs to be subject to government regulation. This doesn't mean that those elements that we encounter in Deus Ex doesn't mean that this technology isn't necessarily good, and more importantly, it's not going to change anything about the technology. People are still going to crave it. I mean, look at the use of anabolic steroids in various sports, and believe me, steroids are used in virtually every sport, including by golfers, believe it or not. I mean, technically it's illegal unless you get a prescription, and certainly the doses that many athletes, particularly bodybuilders, but many athletes use are dubious. You would never get it. For example, there's no doctor who would say, "You, sir, need 500 milligrams of testosterone enantate per week." No one would do that. I mean, we're talking about magnitudes, thousands of magnitudes above, hundreds of magnitudes above what you would normally produce, even at the top end of genetic male specimens. So, but people still crave it. They still go after it, because it gives them an advantage, because it enhances their bodies. Same with augmentation technology. Let's say in some theoretical universe, hypothetical universe, the Taggarts get control of it. Jensen says, "Yeah, we'll give it to Taggart. We'll let the government take control of everything." So what essentially you get is a war on drugs, except it becomes a war on augmentation technology, right? We see this with anabolic steroids. People still use them. Every time I go to the gym, I see dozens of guys on the juice. So nothing's changed. The fact that it's supposed to be government regulated and technically illegal without some sort of formal medical prescription has not changed the game. People still use it. So what would happen? You would get a black market for augmentation technology, which I might add is essentially what you see with the mercenary group that is the main opposition force to Seraph Industries and the protagonist Adam Jensen. That's black market, as black market as you can get. Tai Young Medical Industries. I mean, yeah, most of the stuff that they do occurs behind closed doors. It's not exactly illegal. So I'm almost willing to bet money that you would get something to the effect of a equivalent of a steroid or drug black market for augmentation technology. You see this with every piece of technological advancement that humanity or human beings have ever created. Abortion technology. If you make abortions illegal, people go to countries where women will go to countries where they can have abortions. If that's not a possibility, they go to underground abortion clinics. I mean, everything that's an advancement in some way, shape, or form that allows human beings to escape their own biological limitations, be it mental or physical, essentially both mental and physical, since they're both biological in nature, people will want to take advantage of that. And all the laws that human beings can create, governments can create, will not stop people from wanting that. And, more importantly, it will not stop human beings from partaking in that, whatever the risks might be. So the argument I offer for a, Seraph-esque ending, if you will, for Adam Jensen siding with Sarif is pretty simple. Technological advancement is essentially the spirit of human beings. Ever since it dawned on us we could use fire to cook things, create warmth for us during the winter. Bit by bit, slowly but surely, we've been moving in this direction. And it's not going to stop here. Until we destroy ourselves, which is quite possible, it won't stop. So clinging to the past isn't going to help. What essentially I'm arguing for is a bit along the lines of get with the program. We all have to get with the program. I grew up in a Luddite household. My father was against every form of technology you could imagine. I had to learn all this quite late in life. And if I hadn't, I'd be even worse off than I already am. People who don't adapt get left in the dust. That's simply the way it is. And since every major sport is inundated with the use of steroids, you're at a disadvantage if you don't. So if you're an athlete and you're competing, of course you're going to try to use it. The biggest mistake that Ben Johnson, the 1988 Olympics, made was not that he used, well, supposedly he only used Winstrol, which probably is unlikely, but that he used a certain steroid compound as well as others, but rather that he got caught. That was his mistake. Yeah. So, as I said, the argument I'm making is pretty simple and straightforward. An ineluctable force that can't be avoided. If you try to resist it, you'll be pushed aside, swept aside, crushed, or left behind. And at the end of the day, that's the choice we have. We can get with the program. People, the purists, the taggarts, they can get with the program, or they can get left behind. Quite frankly, within the context of the Deus Ex Human Revolution universe, if the purist Humanity Front folks ever got into control, I mean, who knows what would happen exactly. But as I said, I could tell you exactly what would happen if mechanical augmentation technology becomes a government-regulated industry. The black markets will pop up everywhere, crop up everywhere. The prices will shoot through the stratosphere. There will be crime everywhere. There'll probably be a Federal Bureau of Investigation of Augmentation Technology, something along those lines, just like the various bureaus that cropped up as a result or during the Prohibition period, and of course during the so-called War on Terror, initially really pushed for by George Bush Jr., the Department of Homeland Security. So we'd have a Department of Augmentation Technology Regulation, and there would be this enormous black market, and it would be an even bigger problem. So, not a solution. And yeah, there would really have a lot of this technology falling into the wrong hands. Now, I'm not actually making the pitch that the free market is perfect and everything's great, and no, I'm just simply saying that that's the likely outcome of that scenario. If you let the taggarts get control of these things, or at least allow the government to handle these matters. What's the other alternatives? To simply let the technology grow, to let it evolve and see what happens, and try to go with the flow. And what's interesting in this, what's very interesting, I find, is that if you look at the other games of the Deus Ex series, you see the fact that mechanical augmentation becomes obsolete, just like pen and paper became obsolete with regards to a typewriter or with regards to a computer keyboard. Eventually, nanobots, state-of-the-art nanobots, become the augmentation par excellence. There is nothing better than that eventually in the 2070s and 2080s. And mechanical augmentation is it's like riding around in a horse and buggy when you can be riding around a car that can drive 300 miles an hour. It becomes obsolete. And the cycle repeats itself. Here the issue is simply augmentation, period, mechanical augmentation, versus people who want to stay pure, or this needs to be regulated. Moving forward, you have those injections, which is kind of in the chemical, basically pharmaceutical augmentation, which you see in the 2050s. And moving even further down the timeline, you encounter the nanobot technology, right? And the nanobot technology, arguably, is, I guess, the pinnacle of it. And mechanical augmentation becomes obsolete. Pharmaceutical technology becomes obsolete. It's just, this is how human beings work. This is how we progress. We have to go with the flow, or the flow will wipe us out. And at the end of the day, that's my argument for why I would side with Sarif on this, why I think it's pointless to discuss whether or not these things are good or bad, because an ineluctable force simply is. And every ineluctable force, every juggernaut, can bode ill or well, and sometimes can bode ill and well simultaneously. But it's still a juggernaut, and you still have to accept it. Thanks for watching. More to come later.